This is an Aston Martin DBR1. It's here because the new Aston Martin Speedster has been given a tribute livery to this car. I wanted to sit in it. I wanted to make a bit of a thing of this because this is, well, possibly my favourite car ever. It's special to Aston Martin because it won Le Mans in 1959 and sealed the World Sports Car Championship for them that year. It's special to me because I just remember falling in love with it the first time I ever saw one. The racing driver called Peter Hardman was driving it beautifully at Goodwood. Amazing four-wheel drifts, and it just looked so right. That was the feeling I wanted in a car. Ever since, I've just fallen in love with it. Every time I'm asked to do a dream garage, this is in it. I've never driven one. I've never even sat in one until today. So this feels very special indeed.
Only 5 DBR1s were ever produced, and the last time one of them came up for auction, it set a new record for a British car, selling for $22,550,000. This is chassis number 4. In fact, originally this car was a DBR3 with a later, larger engine, but it was converted to DBR1 spec in period, and in the hands of Paul Frere and Maurice Trintignant, came second at Le Mans in 1959, behind the winning DBR1 of Carroll Shelby and Roy Salvadori.
I suppose we should go and drive the Speedster really, but just a couple more minutes. It is so beautiful.
Jumping across a 60-year gap brings us to this, the Aston Martin V12 Speedster. At £765,000, it is a snip compared to a DBR1, and they're building a whopping 88 of them, so you're much more likely to be able to get hold of one as well. I actually think this livery rather suits it, the roundel breaking up that long side and bringing out the lovely 177 style strakes. I also love the wing mirrors, which are similarly inspired by the 177. Now, when I saw this in the studio for the first time in 2020, I had some very definite ideas about where I might like to drive it.
I can see myself driving this, perhaps on the sort of the Targa Florio route or Mille route. Italy, hot, summer, V12, flies in your hair. Should be good. This is not quite what I had in mind. For all that it looks really racy, it's very easy to get into and very easy to start up. The steering's quite light, and actually the tuner of the dampers, certainly in their softer setting, is, well, remarkably compliant. It feels, well, very habitable. For all that you're obviously very exposed in this car, I'm wearing a helmet partly for safety and partly so that you can actually hear me, but you do sit really nicely down in the car, so you feel pretty secure. The interior overall is actually quite a mixture as well. It looks quite sparse initially, and you've got lots of sort of bare, naked carbon fibre, which is lovely. But then you've got some real luxury in here as well. I also love these seats. These carbon seats with a sort of sparse padding feel fantastic. Underneath, it's a bit of a hybrid as well. Actually, hybrid's probably not the right word. It gives different sort of connotations. Mishmash. No, Aston probably wouldn't like that. No, they would say it makes full use of their modular architecture because, well, it's essentially based on a Vantage, but then it's got a DBS front end in order to cope with the fact that it's got the engine from the DBS, the 5.2 litre twin turbocharged V12. But then at the back, it's got the gearbox from the DB11, the 8-speed ZF Auto. The reason for this is because it's lighter. It means they've had to clip the torque slightly from the engine just so that it can cope. But then it's also got the mechanical limited slip diff from the DBS. Add into that completely bespoke carbon fibre bodywork, and well, it's very definitely its own thing. You can't really sort of trace it directly to any one car in Aston's lineup.
The figures for the engine are 700 brake horsepower and 555 pounds-foot of torque. 0 to 62 miles an hour comes up in a brisk 3.5 seconds, and if you've got the stomach, or rather neck muscles for it, then the top speed is 186 miles an hour. In terms of the suspension, well, as is now the Aston way, there are double wishbones at the front and a multi-link setup at the rear.
We've got obviously big carbon ceramic brakes, 410mm on the front. Turn it in, you feel a bit of weight and an awful lot of torque, obviously, to light up the rear tyres. And actually we've obviously got 3 levels on the dampers here. I've been generally going to the middle setting on the dampers, which feels nice, and then into sport, which just sharpens the throttle and everything. With the dampers in the middle setting, it becomes a busier car, but I just like the extra sense of connection that you get. It gives you a bit more feel to it, because you don't get an initial sense of where the front end is, so it's not wriggling with feel through the steering, and you know that it's a large front end.
The decision to go with the big V12 has really defined the car in many ways. It's given the Speedster a halo status because it's the largest engine Aston does, and everyone loves a big engine in a small car. However, there's no getting around the fact that it's also a heavy engine. The Speedster might be 40 kilos lighter than a DBS Superleggera, but at 1800 kilos overall, it's never going to be the track-focused offering you might expect from the looks. Hence the relatively compliant, road-biased setup. I imagine most customers will have a Valkyrie on order for track work anyway.
I can actually see the sun up there. Ah, here comes the rain again. I confess a couple of times I have gone for the wiper stalk and then realised there's no windscreen or windscreen wipers. Just do that instead. For all that the gearbox is probably at the limit of its torque capabilities, it does actually feel swifter and smoother than I remember in the DB11. Obviously above about sort of 40-50 miles an hour, you can't really hit anything other than wind noise in here, but at the lower gears and lower speeds, that exhaust, that bespoke central exhaust, really, it gives a different character to this V12 than I've heard before. It sounds really quite racy. It's a really angry sound, but just, it sounds lighter and there's a harder edge to it. I love it. For all these cars can seem a bit ridiculous, I rather like them, I have to say. As somebody that's driven a Caterham through winter with no roof and driven Morgans without the roof on an awful lot, what's not to like in a way? It's just entertaining, exciting, makes you feel alive. For all the fact it hasn't got a roof and it might seem really unusable, they've made it actually as easy to jump into and just set off as possible.
And I like that. People probably thought I was mad, or perhaps just British, when they saw me in it. But even in weather like this, driving without a roof can be really good fun if you're just prepared to get stuck in.
I think it looks really good dirty as well, I have to say. Cars that look like they shouldn't be used, but then look really like they have been used. That's quite cool.
Here's hoping then that some of the 88 customer cars go to people who believe in the old adage that there is no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing.